it doesn't mean that you're not trusting God. It's quite the opposite. It means like you have the courage to feel that, and you know that God is working in your life. But at the same time, like, this is our limit, and it's okay to seek for help. And there's such a big stigma that prevents us from being able to say, yeah, I need to go to the counselor, and it's okay.
Welcome to the Leadership 360 podcast, a thought-provoking podcast tailored for Seventh-day Adventist church leaders seeking to elevate their leadership skills and enhance their faith and explore how to be transformed into the image of God. Join us each month as we have conversations with leaders from across the Texas Conference to help you become the leader God has called you to be. I am so excited that I have Nancy Alverez Soto. She is a licensed professional counselor here in the DFW area. Nancy and I work together. She's done some presentations for us for our elders trainings a couple of years ago. I've referred some of our members and some of our pastors for some resources. But Nancy, I'm looking forward to this conversation where we talk about mental health and how we can better understand how we can process through the craziness of life in 2025. So, Nancy, thank you for coming, and it's good to see you again. Let's start off by tell us a little bit about Nancy. How did you become a counselor? What's your background? How did you get here today? How did you get to this point in your life and in your career?
Yes. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. It's really good to be here. I think my personal journey as a therapist, as a counselor, started like with my own issues that I had growing up and intergenerational traumas.
Sure.
So I think it was in a way I always knew that I wanted to help and to help other people, but also do service for God. I didn't know what that looked like. I'll be real honest. And I went to college thinking I'm going to become a doctor. That was my thought, And then I'll never forget. And every time I tell this story, people always laugh. I took a chemistry class in my undergrad, and I thought it was the most horrible thing I could take. I couldn't bear sitting through there learning about this stuff that just seemed like another language. And I thought, no, this is not what I want to do. And then along the way, somebody said, hey, you could go into psychology and do counseling. And I thought, yeah, the more I, looked into it, and I thought, yeah, I think this is it. This is the way that I want to help people. I want to listen. I want to be able to help with their mental health as well.
So you graduated from Southwestern?
I went to Southern Methodist University, SMU. Yeah.
So that for your undergrad?
No, for my undergrad, I went to SWAL for a year.
Okay.
And then I transferred. I went to community college.
Okay.
And then I transferred to SMU.
To SMU.
But I did finish my undergrad in psychology there.
And then you did your master's
yes.
at SMU too, right?
That's right.
Wow.
I did my master's in counseling there as well.
Okay. Mm-hmm. How long have you been in practice?
I've been in practice for about 6 years and a half now.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And you have an office. Are you part of a larger group, or are you an individual?
I am doing kind of both.
Okay.
So I'm venturing out to kind of be on my own, but I also do group practice.
Okay, gotcha. Mm-hmm. And you're in the Dallas area, kind of
yes.
the North Dallas,
the
Carrollton,
North Dallas area,
Richardson, all of
right.
that.
Mm-hmm.
But you do, as we were talking a little bit off camera, you also do telehealth.
That's right. Yep.
Which I'll say from the get-go has been super helpful for me when I talk to pastors and when I talk to members who are looking for someone or at least looking for resources. I'm like, yeah, Nancy does telehealth, which, as we said before, that's kind of been a game changer.
Yes.
With a lot of health, treatment, let alone, mental health treatment.
Yes, very convenient. So I'm licensed in the state of Texas. So that means through telehealth, I can see anybody who lives in the state of Texas.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit. You've got a wonderful husband, 2 great kids.
Yeah.
How long you've been married? How old are the kids?
Oh, let's see. With my husband, I'll be married. We were talking about this yesterday. 12 years this year.
Right.
Yeah, we've been together. We actually met in the academies.
Oh, wow.
The Adventist academies. He went to Dallas Christian Academy, and I went to North Dallas Adventist Academy. And we've been together since.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We have 2 girls. One is 10. She's, and I think both of them are just very, how do I describe them to you? They're very outspoken, very confident, very fearless.
I love that.
Yeah. And I have a 3-year-old too.
I love that.
Yeah.
And your husband just holds on and says, man, living with 3 women?
I
Okay.
ask him, what is it like to live with all women? Please tell me.
And I'm sure he says, it is wonderful because he knows better.
Yeah, he does.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about kind of the elephant in the room. And that is this idea that there still seems to be a stigma, even in 2025, within Christianity, but specifically within Seventh-day Adventism, that says if you see a counselor or a therapist, it's not something you should do. Mm-hmm. If you're having issues, whether it be depression or anxiety or whatever, you need to pray harder or have more faith. How do we deal with that in our churches? Because we do have a lot of people dealing with a lot of these issues. You have the stigma of, wow, if you go to talk to somebody, then your faith is lacking, but they also need help.
Yes. And I think it's the idea behind that, if we're going through something difficult, if we're struggling, it equates to my faith is weak, or therefore I am weak, or I'm so far removed from God that I can't deal with it myself, And in all reality, we go through very difficult things in life. I think the moment that sin entered the world, we don't really comprehend how much it really affects us, and that we're not exempt from going through those difficult things and just being human, which means we're gonna struggle, we're gonna experience anxiety and the depression, no matter how much our faith is in God. And I think one of the things we need to realize in the church is it's not a matter of your character and being weak. Just because you're expressing that you're feeling sad, like if you've gone through a grief, if you've lost somebody, if you lost your job, anything that has been difficult in your life, trauma, it doesn't make you somebody who's weak in faith. It doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that you're not trusting God. It's quite the opposite. It means like you have the courage to feel that, and you know that God is working in your life, but at the same time, like, this is our limit, and it's okay to seek for help. And there's such a big stigma that prevents us from being able to say, yeah, I need to go to the counselor, and it's okay.
So how do we change that? What can local leaders do? And I'll be the first to admit, I've gone through counseling, met with a therapist. It was life-changing for me, helped me deal with some stuff. How do we change that in our churches?
Yeah. I think we start by having these conversations and just being honest. And I think the more we talk about it and the more we empathize with other people in conversations and say like, wow, that's difficult. Have you thought about, seeking help, or how can I support you? I think it's a matter of creating these spaces for people to feel comfortable enough to open up. Because I think one of the biggest issues, and I think especially in the church, is we don't necessarily always have those spaces for our church people to come and talk about mental health, to come to the pastor and say like, my marriage is not doing well. And this is taking a toll on me mentally, and I need a counselor. What can I do? Or how can you help? Do you have any resources? Sometimes it's a matter of just having that space and opening it up for people.
We have folk who, if I admit my marriage is going wrong, or I admit that I'm feeling sad or dealing with grief or whatever, it shows weakness.
Right. Yeah. And I think that it's changing the narrative and maybe verbalizing it and saying it like, and telling the person like, wow, thank you for coming to tell me this. Like you have a lot of courage to do that. Or it takes a lot of bravery for you to admit, that you're in a place where I can be of help, or I can look for help for you. So sometimes it is.
One of the things, and I'll be transparent for a second, I used to have that philosophy of, man, if I go to a counselor, that means I'm crazy. Mm-hmm. And over the course of ministry, the first part of my ministry, I had a counselor share with me, hey, everybody has a story.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to process through your story and how God has led you, and those places where, yeah, you're still dealing with issues and you're still dealing with that. The other thing for me was somebody said to me, don't you go to a doctor for a checkup for, cholesterol, blood pressure, all the stuff, physically? Why wouldn't you find someone who's a professional to at least check in? It doesn't mean you have to do therapy, 3 times a week for the rest of your life. At least check in and say, hey, is my thought process, am I handling this healthfully? So I think you're spot on. Education and conversations are huge.
Yes.
Have you seen, as you've had these conversations in church, like I said, you did some elders training for us a couple of years ago. Have you seen people become more open to saying, okay, yeah, maybe this is something I need to do or should do?
Yes, slowly. I'll admit, slowly, but we are getting to that point, I think. And I think one of the most exciting things, as you mentioned that, for me, is the North American division has actually, has a movement on pushing for mental health resources. And I think they started that in 2022 when they saw the need after COVID.
Right.
And I think, we're headed in the right direction. In the same way that we promote physical health and lifestyle changes within our church and just Adventist movement in general, we are promoting like just overall well-being. And that definitely includes our mental health. Yeah.
So let's talk for a minute. What are some of the main mental health issues that you're seeing either through your practice or just in your interactions with church members or work that you've done with various churches? What are some of those main mental health issues that we're facing today? I know we talked about, one of your specialties is adolescence. Mm-hmm. I mean, if there was ever a group of people that was affected by COVID,
yes,
it was adolescents. What are you seeing in terms of some of the issues?
I think a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, but also a lot of, for example, mental health disorders that are impeding like their learning capacity. So, for example, we've seen it's not that it's a rise in ADHD cases or autism or any of that. It's just we're paying more attention. Whereas before it was present. We kind of just ignored it and like, he'll be fine. They'll outgrow it. Because eventually, as kids do, they're resilient and they do. They figure out a way. But it's kind of like, why would we let them struggle so much to that point instead of getting the help? Whereas more the idea of, and what I've seen in our schools, it's like, if you see something, we can offer that help. Let's go ahead and do it. And let's try to, get to the root of it now instead of waiting until like it's so much for the adolescent or for the child that they're having to struggle through years of like school. And we see, and a lot of the things, I think, with that being said, I also think a lot of it has to do with like family dynamics. We see a lot of issues arising with adolescents, the anxiety, the depression, but it's under the underlying reasons. It's like family dynamics. It's things that they have gone through that they haven't been able to process, or things that are happening at home that nobody talks about, not even them. So it's interesting to see, like, at the root cause of most things, like it's a family thing. Yeah.
I appreciate what you're saying in terms of it's not that we've seen an uptick in these things. It's now we're paying more attention to it.
Yes, yes.
And now we have the resources to help process through that.
Yeah.
So anxiety, depression, anything else that kind of, like I said, whether it be adolescents or adults, obviously in ministry, you see a lot of the anxiety, the depression, ADHD. Go ahead.
Yes, ADHD, a lot of trauma. And the trauma, I think, it's hard to detect it, or it's hard for us to become aware of it because we've normalized a lot of things growing up. So we, as adults, we never, as growing up, we never really got the chance sometimes to process or to have the help or to sit down with a counselor and say, like, oh, this is why I do things, right? Because of what happened like years ago. That's also something that I think it's becoming more aware of what has happened in our lives. But yeah.
So let me piggyback off that and kind of go off script for a second. One thing that we've heard a lot about, at least I have heard a lot about in the mental health community as I've interacted, are ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. Yes, trauma. Talk a little bit about, I mean, you alluded to it, but flesh that out a little bit about how those things, and even articulate some of what those are, how those do affect people 20, 30, 40 years down the road.
Yes, it has a huge impact. And so when we talk about, adverse childhood experiences, it's anything that has been extremely traumatic. And, our mind goes to like the typical that we think of, which is like trauma, abuse, domestic violence, natural disasters even. But it's anything that is extremely traumatic or impactful in somebody's life. It can be the loss of a loved one. It can be, any type of loss. And I think that, if we had this information, if we knew how much it would impact us, down the line, it would prevent so much conflict in relationships, in interpersonal, personal relationships, and the way we kind of go about our lives, because it's something that we do need to heal from. These are not normal everyday stressors that we go through. That's like completely different. Sure. We all experience stress at some point, things that, are it's a little bit of stress. We're able to overcome it. But these are things that like we need the help to kind of process that, to talk about it, and to just be able to heal and be okay.
And there's the inventory that I saw, 15 ACEs, and you tally each one, and I'll admit, as I look at the list, I'm like, wow, I wouldn't have thought about that, or I wouldn't have thought about that as an adverse childhood experience that would have an effect on somebody. What then, once you kind of discover those things, people kind of come face to face with those things, then you're able to to heal from them.
Then we work through that, and you start to realize like why you think the way you think, why you do the things you do, what has helped in order for you to be where you are, what has been unhelpful, and what needs to kind of be changed in order for you to be in a better place too.
So going back to our churches, even being aware of these things help us kind of process through, okay, wow, I know that you have gone through this. One that hit me, because I'm a child of divorce, is divorce. To recognize in our church, wow, this family's going through a divorce. That means that the kids in the family are going to need some kind of help to process through all of this.
Yeah, to navigate that life change.
And the church seems to be well positioned to help families get the resources that they need. Am I reading that right? Because it seems to be where we see life truly happening.
Right.
With school, kids are in and out. They can, you can put a facade on. Even church, we put the facade on. But we see some of these issues coming to the forefront in school, in churches. Yeah. Let's talk about resources. Man, our time, I just looked over at our time, and we're going by, and I got about 20 other things I want to talk about. What are some resources? So let's say, man, we see this family going through a divorce or something like that, or we recognize that this adult has had some adverse childhood experiences or has some anxiety, depression. What are some resources that I, as a local leader in the church, can point them to?
Yes. I think first and foremost is, wanting to have that want to educate yourselves more, to know more about. We talk a lot about mental health, but I don't truly think that we all know what that means. It's kind of one of those things like, oh yeah, health. Yeah, we talk about mental health like it must be emotions kind of thing. But it's more than that. Like you mentioned, like, what ACE is. You looked at the inventories. Like, I think we need more of that.
Okay.
One of the things I highly recommend, it's something that we use, in the field of psychology, is the DSM-5. And that's like an explanation of all the mental health disorders that you can think of in detail. Sure. And I think that really helps because it's kind of like a dictionary of mental health. We could have an idea and we can, do our own research to figure out more. But that details, like, it's just very like well put together to truly understand. I think it's a good resource to have in the church for leaders. And I think in general, just for example, like I mentioned earlier, the NAD has a good resource as well. They have under the health department, I think, they have a lot of resources about mental health. They have a lot of articles that you can read. They have specific sermons that you can listen to. They have, for example, I think they have the directories of SDA counselors as well. Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll put a link in the show notes so that people can have that. Mm-hmm. Just, I think if nothing else, I think you hit the nail on the head, Nancy. Just education.
Yeah. It's just wanting to know more and just learning more about mental health. Yeah.
So let's take it to the extreme. Let's say, okay, I see someone that's exhibiting, depression or anxiety. I've read some books on anxiety, or I've gone through a series of, gone through depression, training and all that kind of. All of a sudden now, am I qualified to jump in and help them, or
Not quite.
Not quite.
Not quite. You can offer that information, but I think just keeping in mind like where are my limitations as a leader. I know this much, but it wouldn't be fair for the other person for me to offer advice that my work might not work too. So I think it's a matter of like, okay, as a leader, where is my limit in how I can help? Even as a pastor, where's that limit? Unless you're trained and you have a degree in counseling, where do I draw the line? When is it time for me to, I'll listen and I will be there to support, but when is it time for me to also refer out to somebody who's more trained?
How do I figure that out? Because I'm even sitting here as a pastor, and I've had some counseling classes, but I'm by no means a counselor. But as a local leader, I may have read some stuff, and what does that look like in terms of, okay, I now know I'm kind of in over my head, I think. How do I find someone to refer to, or what? I mean, what am I even looking for? We talked about LPC, family care.
Right.
There's all kind of different nomenclature out there. Can you kind of help us process through? First and foremost, okay, where's the first place I would look to refer somebody?
Yes, very good question. So along with club ministry, we tried to create like a small directory. Mind you, it's not like all therapists who are SDA in the DFW area. We are trying to put together like a list of referrals that are specifically Adventist that we can refer to. And it's everywhere from, Dallas to Houston to Valley. It's not a long list.
Okay.
I wish it was, and we're working on it. But we definitely do have that available as a first resource. There's sites, for example, like Psychology Today is a good referral to have, where you can specifically look for Christian counselors. Not necessarily Adventist, but at the very least, like Christian, or if there's something specific, like somebody who's trained in trauma, or somebody who's trained specifically in depression or grief. That's also a good resource where you would want to look.
So there's a lot of people out there. We just need to find that person that's going to help, whether it be geographically.
Right.
And what's interesting, and we said this earlier, telehealth is a game changer.
Yes.
You can be in Dallas, the person can be in the Valley, or for wherever, and they're able to in Texas they're able to do that. What do you see the biggest challenge that the church is facing beyond the education part, moving forward with mental health?
That's a good question. And I think that it's not associating like you going through the difficult thing and having like a difficulty with your mental health to like you not having enough faith, because you can. You can definitely have all the faith in the world and trust that God is going to help you. But at the same time, it's a fine line of like, because you're going through this, it does not mean that God is punishing you for this, or that you're not going to get better because your faith is not, good enough.
Sure.
It's kind of thing.
So what I hear you saying is the education part and understanding that mental health is an important part, and it is not a lack of faith. It's actually part of this whole process of, like you said, being a sinful human being. I'm going to have to go through stuff.
Yeah.
But then also finding the resources.
Yes.
I want to end on a positive note before we get to the lightning round, because I want us to spend some time on this. As a leader in the church, what are some ways that we can take care of our own mental health? Because we can give an awful lot.
Right.
You know, we can have the DSM-5 and we can hopefully you're not diagnosing, oh, that person has this, that person has that. We can give a lot of ourselves in leadership.
Yes.
And many times we forget to take care of our own mental health. Give us some things that we can do to take care of our own mental health.
Yeah. We need to spend time to slow down. Maybe not what you were hoping to hear.
No. I love it.
We need time to, slow down and sit with yourself and ask yourself, how am I doing? And really answer that question. Like, take the time. Because we say many times, like, oh, I'm good. And people ask you all the time, how are you doing? I'm good. I'm doing great, is what we say sometimes. Yeah. When we know that sometimes we're not doing great, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. Sometimes we feel overwhelmed. Sometimes we feel stressed. Sometimes we feel down. And it's not for something in particular. It's just, we go through so many things. We don't process. We don't slow down to think and ask ourselves, how are we doing? We definitely don't deal with it because we're not bringing that to our awareness as well. So I would say, first and foremost, just be honest with yourself and ask yourself, how are you doing? And nobody knows yourself better than you. So you have to keep that in mind too. And I think, when we're not doing well, whether that's stress from something that happened today, maybe something minor, or stress that you've been carrying your entire lives and you haven't dealt with it, you need to be true to yourself and say, like, hey, I'm not in a good place. And I think now is the time to talk about it. Now is the time to reach out and do something about it. And without the fear of, what is the church going to think? What is my pastor going to think? If he sees me being this type of leader who's always like on top of things, always has it together, but I'm struggling, and I'm struggling big. So I think it's recognizing when you're not doing okay and just reaching out. Things that we can do to practice self-care is take a break.
Take a break.
We do so much, and sometimes we're so much to other people, and it's like, well, who takes care of us? Because if I don't do it, nobody else will do it for me. And so if we take care of ourselves as leaders, we'll be able to take care of others as well. So
I love that idea of self-reflection. What does that look like to slow down? I mean, we live such crazy, busy lives, work, home, family, church, all that kind of stuff. Is it, okay, I'm sitting in a room by myself like this, or what does that self-reflection look like? How do I fit that into my schedule? I guess is the the answer I'm really looking for.
Yes, because there's never enough time.
No, that's right.
We have to make the time. It doesn't have to be, something grand. It doesn't have to be something that you're going to take like hours of your day or even minutes. But for example, I'll share with you what I do.
Okay.
So my family likes to listen to music, and we listen to like the Christian music, and I love that. But when I drive by myself, I don't turn the radio at all. It's like me in silence. And a lot of people think like, whoa, like I can't do that. What do you do with your thoughts kind of thing? But that is my time to kind of self-reflect, to unwind, and I think to mentally prepare myself for the day. Most of the time it's before or as I'm heading to work. And I think about all these things, like how has your week been? How are you doing? You have a lot going on in between, like work, the girls. What is it that I want to do for myself this week? And it's my time to talk with God and say like, hey God, like this week has been so much, or this week has been amazing. Why has it been amazing? Thank you for, the blessings that you give. It's my time to kind of, just self-reflect a little and think.
So it doesn't have to be 3-4 hours of,
It doesn't, no. For other people, it might look like just going outside on a nature walk. For some people, it's journaling. For some people, it's doing their devotional time. For some people, it's praying to God. It can look like many different things. You just have to find something that works for you.
So let's say, and again, I want to help with the stigma of counseling and help educate people. Let's say I'm coming to you as a client. What does a session look like? Am I laying, the joke is, oh, am I laying down on the couch? And the counselor says, how are you feeling? Or what does a counseling session look like?
Yes. Good question. I don't get asked that a
No,
lot.
it was something that.
And I think it's great.
No, because a lot of people wonder what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Ooh, they closed the door now, 45 minutes. What's going to happen?
Yes. So we tend not to do so much psychoanalysis, which is like the typical lay on the couch and, you see your therapist writing notes as you speak. It depends, I think, a lot on what kind of therapy. So for kids and for even for some adolescents, I practice a lot of play therapy.
Okay.
So play therapy looks different than the normal talk. And for them, it's, we believe that play is a language that they use in order to express themselves. So they get some free time to kind of play with the toys that we have in the office. And we just kind of observe and talk here and there. So it's very much more interactional, if you will.
Okay.
For traditional talk therapy, it doesn't always have to be just sitting down either. And I like to explain that to people because some of them are like, well, I don't know what to talk about. And I'm like, that's okay. We'll kind of see where it goes. And so we sit down and we start talking. Most of the time, they have so much to talk about that they didn't realize it until they sit down. Sometimes with adolescents, we like to do therapeutic activities, where, I can tell them, like, do me a list of all the things that, are on your mind or all the things that scare you. We kind of go from there. So it can look a little bit different, but it's not the traditional of like, it's just...
You're not trying to get my deep, dark secrets out of me and all that kind of stuff.
Definitely not on the first session.
Not on the first session.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a conversation, and I think you said that kind of across the board with whether it's the play therapy or whether it's adolescents doing, or even just conversation. I'll admit I had that fear. It's like, okay, I'm going to go in and what are we going to talk about? Right. And counselors are trained to help process. Yes. The other
we like to. Sorry, we
go ahead.
We like to ask a lot of questions. In order to kind of get you thinking a little bit and for you to kind of go on that journey yourself. It's not like a guided thing where I have an agenda. It's very much like what's on your mind, and we kind of just see where the session goes that day.
We were talking about how unique your training as a counselor is as opposed to some of us, whether it be a pastor or educator. We're trained to give answers. Right. You give me a question, I'm going to solve your problem. Here we are, bada boom. You're trained to ask questions and listen and be okay with silence.
Yes, yes.
And help the person kind of process through in their time and in their way. Yes,
so that eventually they can get to a point where they can solve their own problems.
And I think that's so important to say is you're not just doing it to doing. Right. You're doing it with the idea of we're going to come up with some solutions. Right. And then normally at the end is usually some take-home things of, okay, what have you learned? What are you going to take, until we meet again, what do we...
That's right. Yeah.
So it's so my point in bringing this up is, as I said before, is I want the mystery of what therapy is or what counseling is to kind of go away because we've seen it in the media, we've seen it, preconceived notions, and much of what we see is not necessarily the case.
Yes, yes. So it's think of it, and this is what I say to people in my sessions, this is a space for you to be able to feel comfortable, for you to feel safe, for you to kind of work on the things that you want to work. I'm here to offer you the support, to help you to get to the goals that you want to get to. But at the end of the day, this is your time. And so we'll go at your pace. We'll talk about what you want to work on, what you want to talk about. And I'm just here to kind of guide you, to kind of help you with the knowledge that I have.
As we close this part, what is one big thing? If the folk who have listened to us or watched us, forget everything we talked about. And we've talked about a lot of great stuff. What is one thing you want them to not forget? Kind of one big takeaway from our conversation.
Yeah, it's the importance of just listening to your mental health, because it speaks to us when we're not doing okay, and that it's okay to reach for help when we get to that point.
It's okay to reach for help. Yeah. I love that. Wow. All right, man, there was like 10 other things going through my head that I want to cover, but I want to make sure that we have time for the lightning round, because this is where we're going to get to know you a little bit.
Okay.
So are you a morning person or a night owl?
I'm a night owl. If I have to do work, which I do, like I do a lot of paperwork, I do it when everybody's asleep. It's the only time that I have peace and quiet in my house, because my girls are very much morning persons.
Oh, they're more. Yeah. Mom has to be a night owl because the kids are more. Okay.
Yes.
So night owl, like late, or midnight comes and it's like, okay, I'm ready to.
No, not too late. I say night owl because I have two little girls, and so 8:30 is like they're asleep. But I would say I work from like 9 to 12.
Okay.
Yeah, I try not to go to sleep. Then I can't wake up since they're a morning person.
Now, it's interesting. Is your husband a morning person or a night person?
He's very much a night owl, too.
Okay, so all right, gotcha. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you have that in common. That works.
Yeah.
What is your favorite time of the year?
I would probably say winter time. I love winter time. Yeah. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that, so I was born in November.
Okay.
And I think I love it. I love the holidays. I love the Christmas spirit. I really enjoy it.
And you love snow too.
I love snow.
Oh, see.
Yeah.
You need to spend time up north. You'll get tired of snow very quickly.
Yes. Yeah.
What is the most memorable trip you've ever taken?
The most memorable trip? That's a good question. I want to say we've gone to Colorado a couple of times, but the very first time we went, now I'm from Texas.
Right.
I was born here. I've been here my entire life. I still live here. But I had never seen the mountains like in Colorado. And I'll never forget, like you see it in pictures and you have an idea, right? But then when you first see them, they're just so majestic. I was like, wow, this is God's beautiful creation. I think that was probably one of the most memorable ones for me. And I still remember. And every time I go to Colorado now, because we do travel often, we love it there.
Okay.
I still get that feeling of, wow, I mean, they're so like huge. Yeah. They're so pretty.
And they have snow too. See,
there you go. See, I love snow.
What is one thing on your bucket list?
One thing on my bucket list is probably to go to Thailand. I would like to visit Thailand. I don't know. Something about the culture, the people, and the food. I love food. And I think one of the things right now is I'm enjoying Thai food. So I think maybe that's why. But right. I want to travel.
Thailand. Yeah. If you could have any animal as a pet, what would it be?
This is funny. You asked me that. A goat.
A goat?
I would love a goat.
Why? Of all the, you could have a lion, a bear, you could have anything.
No.
A goat. Why?
A goat.
Why a goat?
Because they're so full of character. I've seen videos of them. They're smart. They're very smart. I don't know. I just think they're cute too.
No, you don't have enough room in the backyard for you guys to have a goat.
We live too up north, so we're not allowed to have animals like that. Yeah, but maybe one day.
I was gonna say you need to move out. Maybe move out, get some acreage, you can get your goats.
Yes,
man.
Yes.
Last question: best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice: don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. I think that's something that I try to live my life doing. Don't be afraid to speak up when you need to. Don't be afraid to speak up for others when it's needed, to advocate for others as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to stand up here. I love that. Mm-hmm. Imagine how different of a world it would be.
Yes, absolutely.
And yeah. Mm-hmm. We could get into a counseling session here with that, but I love that. Stand up for yourself. Ask for what you need.
Yeah.
Nancy, this has been so much fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for being a resource for our churches, for our members. You've been a huge help to us in our department as we've processed through helping our leaders. And again, being on the podcast has helped out. And I hope that our conversation at the very least starts to take away the stigma a little bit more.
Yes, I agree. Thank you for having me.
And we'll put your contact information in the show notes as we get ready to drop the episode. But thank you for joining us on Leadership 360 and another episode of this great podcast where we have great conversations with leaders from throughout the Texas Conference, helping to enhance your leadership to help you be the leader that God has called you to be. We'll see you next time on Leadership 360.